everybody. I got it going. I did it. Yay. I'm so excited that the whatever is going on with Instagram glitch and everything worked out. Hopefully Instagram is cooperating tonight. I know there's an Instagram and Facebook, Twitch. Anyways, hi, this is the Cellar Geek podcast. You can catch me on all podcast platforms. I stream this podcast live through my YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook channels. So you can catch this show podcast streaming 7 p.m. Central every Tuesday. So please follow, subscribe, whatever, so you're tuned in on to be able to watch it. Or you can go on your podcast platforms and watch it from there, like Spotify and Apple Music and iHeartTunes and all those. All right. Well, welcome. If you tune in before, you'll see we have a little bit of a different background today. We're back to the couch. I said last week, we're moving away from the table, so you can't see what we're drinking today. I know. Maybe I'll change it up later on. This is how it is now. Hopefully, let me try to get this microphone a little bit closer. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So we're back on the couch. We have added this sign behind me. So at any point in time in the show or podcast, I keep saying show, podcast, you can see what the wine is that I'm drinking. It's also going to be labeled everywhere. So I just know when I watch other podcasts or lives or something, I'm always like, what are you drinking? And so now you can just look at the sign and see. So today, the topic is Coca wine and Gonc Slovenian wine. So you know how we do it. We're starting off with a drink because I am thirsty. Also, anybody who is wondering about a foot update, next Wednesday is my next appointment with Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell, and hopefully I get approved for regular shoe wearing, which is exciting. Also a little nerve-wracking because I'm still, obviously I'm wearing the boot now, and it's kind of crazy to think in pretty much 7 days I'm going to be approved for a shoe, and it's going to be another adjustment to retrain my foot and leg and muscles and everything. So but we're getting there, guys. This is almost 2 months of healing after my surgery, so we're here where we need to be with that. So where I need to be with that. I guess we're in it together. We're a team. So that's what's going on with that. The Palm Psalm is right here next to me on the couch. I don't want to pick her up though, because she's not been feeling her best today. So she has been snoozing a lot and just being a little mopey. So she's glad to be back on the couch too, because she can kind of have her own little spot to lay down. Let's get into the wine. So I have had wine from this winery before, and I am a fan of Gonc wine. The other wines that I've had from them have been just fantastic. I can't drink the bottle fast enough, quite honestly. I am a fan of Slovenian wine. I think they're really doing great things in that country. And also a big bonus of this, which I didn't even realize because I'm a Gonc winery fan, is imported by JP Bourgeois right here. And I've actually spoken to him. He's a really cool guy. He actually sent me a mixed case of the wines that he imports for me to try out for maybe some of my clients to be interested in the stuff. I love to support importers. There's certain ones like Kermit Lynch, for example, just throwing one in the mix. I definitely look for certain importers. Mary Taylor. There's certain importers on labels that you're like, it's almost like a personal shopper. And you start realizing that you like the stuff that they're importing. So if it's a new wine and you're unsure of it, if you flip it over on the back and look at the label and see if it's an importer that perhaps a lot of other wines you've had happens to be from them, you can almost blind guess and have a more educated guess and educated purchase to say, I'm probably going to like this wine because I've liked everything else this importer brings in. So, that's just a little tip for when you're out shopping. I know I always look at the labels for that. And so, pleasant surprise that JP imports this, and very affordable. I got this for 20 bucks at Dallas Bar and Garden in Dallas, Texas. It is a screw top, no judgment there. I have no quaffs about a screw top. It just means that the wine is always going to be fresh. So let's fresh crack it open. There we go. And sorry, limited mobility because I have my foot up on the couch, out of frame. Using my lovely glassware that I got for Christmas for my husband and love these. Josephine Hewitt. They're by Zalto, but they're a subsidiary brand and they are beautiful. Oh my gosh, I just love them. Here we go. Little what do they call it, ASMR, I guess. All right. Oh, it smells lovely. It does. It smells like pear and fresh cut apples. It smells so juicy on the nose. mm. Oh, that's lovely. Juicy, acidity, I'd say medium body with this. Lovely. It's not quite cold enough. I put it in the refrigerator and I guess it didn't get cold enough over the hour. So I got my trusty freezer bag here, so maybe it'll chill it up a smidge more. It's not quite cold enough for me, but no hate on that. That's my fault. I had it in the refrigerator for about an hour and it just, I guess I wasn't quite enough. Also I had it out all day from um my cellar, so it got to room temp. And anyways, it tastes really good as is though. Mm, that's lovely. I don't even want to put it back down. I'm just gonna hold on to it. So tasty. Um, okay, so if you were watching this and not listening, you would have seen that the bottle had a ton of dots on the label. And Gonc comes out with other wines, but all the wines that I've had from them have the dots on them or some version of the dots. And so I looked up what that actually meant. I thought maybe it means something. So there's actually 136 dots on the label, and that represents 136 liters in the barrel of wine. And that barrel is, I think, man, I don't want to get the country wrong, so I'm not going to say it. But the barrel name is Gonc, Gonc, and so hence the winery name. This is a lighter alcohol percentage at 13%. It says a dry white wine on there, but I've had drier, quite honestly. Mm. I guess it is dry, but it's very white flowers, a little floral. You get that juicy pear, juicy apple from it. Long finish. Like I said, the acidity's there. It's making my mouth water. It's really, really lovely. Like I said, also it's not quite cold enough for me, but it's delicious. It also said that this is hand picked, which I love. The care and love went into this to hand pick it and not use machines. Just shows that extra level of care, which is fantastic also to hear from a $20 bottle of wine. I mean, yes, thank you very much. Um, when I read about this grape varietal, which is called Kerner, originated in Germany, and it said that it's Riesling like, Riesling adjacent. I don't know if I quite agree with that. I mean, it's not. It doesn't have the sweetness level like a Riesling at all. Mm, Honestly, I would shoot it over more to a Chenin Blanc if we're gonna talk about a cousin or a distant relative. I wouldn't put it in pairing with Riesling, so I do disagree with what that said. Um, the things that you should be smelling and tasting are pear, apple blossom. Quite frankly, who goes around sniffing apple trees to know what an apple blossom smells like? But anyways, it is what it is. It said apple blossom, green apple, lemon zest. Also, it said it's vegan. And, I really get on to certain labels that are slapped on wines that are just ridiculous. They're redundant. I've spoken about this in some of the other episodes, like for, say, the sake episode, where it was stating certain things and it was redundant because the laws of Japan deemed that those items could not be in sake. So, sometimes you have labels on things that are for marketing values, and it's stupid to put it on there. But I will say this, that does mean something if you see that on a label of wine, because I know personally I worked at Torbeck in Australia and worked with other people that made wine, and a fining agent or a filtration agent I know was used as egg whites, was put in, and as it goes down from the top of the wine to the bottom, it pulls the impurities out. It makes it settle to the bottom of the vat or whatever container you're using. So I know that there are things that are used like that, that are animal byproducts to help filter the wine in that way. So if you are vegan and I mean, I would say strict vegan, but I don't know a vegan that's not strict. If you're vegan, that's pretty much like one of the strictest ways you can eat. So, it is something to look for. So, if you are a vegan and you're listening to this, I would recommend this Gonc wine. It says vegan on it, a very recognizable label, so you can't miss it. Anyways, so this family that makes this wine, and I found this really interesting and made me love it even more, even though I already love Gonc Winery because I've loved everything else that I've drank from them. It's Hungarian origin, so that's where the family originates from. And this winery started in 1936. Now it's ran by Peter, who's fourth generation, but his great grandfather started it. And he started it after, it says, after World War II. He moved to the city. Now, I'm not going to say the city because these are Slovenian cities, and I'm not going to butcher the names of them. There's like one vowel and four consonants. Like, I don't think I could. I think I would have butchered the name. If my friend Iggy is watching this with Iggy Wines in Australia, he is my buddy and he was born in Slovenia. He's Slovenian. He would know how to pronounce the cities. I do not. So we're just going to not name that city. But, anyways, he moved after World War II into the city, and started working as a cellar cleaner, a wine cellar cleaner. And then he worked his way up to the head winemaker and CEO of the oldest Slovenian winery, which is now called Pullus, Pullus. That is such a cool story. I love hearing stories about the knit and grit, and that you had somebody working so hard for a winery or for their goals or over adversity. Like, that's such a cool story. So that made me honestly fall in love with this winery even more when I read that, which is super cool. All right. The topic of the night, Coca wine. Okay, so let's see, what does that mean? I kind of kept it a little vague in the description for everyone. So, Coca wine, think about Coca Cola if you're listening to this in the United States, or I guess Coca Cola is pretty much worldwide now. Coca Cola at one time was known as containing coca leaves and cocaine. We're talking about the same thing, folks. So apparently there was cocaine wine that was going on in the 1800s. And this is a story that is new to me, and I'm sharing it with you. When I was digging through, studying, Just, the obscurities, I guess, of wine. The far corners of wine stories that I find so intriguing. And why are not more people talking about these things? Because they're so wild. It's a real thing that happened, and not only a real thing that happened, but it happened all over, highly advertised, used by very famous people, and like we don't know anything about this now. Nobody talks about this. So I thought I'd put a little highlight on this tonight. All right, so coca wine, or wine with cocaine in it, coca leaves. Um was not just one winery. I thought that at first when I started digging into the story, but it was one main winery, I guess, that got the most attention and advertising and, um, what's the other word for it? People that I guess vouched for it. There were hundreds of famous actors and actresses and government officials and everything that advocated for this wine, which was quite surprising, for the mid to late 1800s is really where I was seeing it was hitting. But apparently it was all over. And also shockingly, not only was cocaine being used in wine, but cocaine was being used in everything back then. They said cocaine was even being used in baby formula. Listen, I was reading about this and studying it and looking up and researching to try to get all the details on it. And it was cracking me up because the things people were saying was making me laugh out loud. Anyways, let's get into some of it here. Okay, so the main winery that was known back then was called Vin Mariani. It was French, made by a French chemist named Angelo Mariani. And this was done in 1863. So, like I said, this cocaine wine era was mid to late 1800s. Um, so I read that back then, usually you would not only chew on coca leaves, but chew them with lime. And it said that the lime helped break down the coca leaves into the component of actual cocaine, like to get that benefit. And that this French chemist, Angelo, found out that the components of wine actually broke down the coca leaves into that desirable chemical compound. So, really interesting was that he made it with Bordeaux wine. So, this was like not swill. He was making this with Bordeaux wine and coca leaves. And like that wasn't enough. Like if the Bordeaux wine and the coca leaves and cocaine was not enough, he decided also to add brandy and sugar to the bottles. So honestly, I want to try it. I want to try it with this. I mean, I can't now because it's outlawed, obviously, because cocaine, bad stuff. But I would love to have tasted what this concoction tasted like back then. Made with Bordeaux wines, coca leaves, which turned it into cocaine, and then also there was brandy and sugar in the bottle. What? Okay, so that was the situation. Also, I found it really interesting. So, since he was a chemist, and like I said in some other podcasts, and we talked about this, was that wine in those years, in the olden years, 1800s and before, wine was readily used for medicinal purposes and also religious purposes. So no surprise when there was prescriptions for this wine and also recommended dosages. So I thought it was funny that the recommended dosage of this cocaine wine was 2 to 3 glasses a day for adults and 1 to 2 glasses a day for children. For children, not just wine, but this is wine that contains cocaine and brandy. So it's even a higher alcohol than normal wine. I read some that's being made today, obviously without the cocaine, but it comes in at 22% alcohol. going by the old recipes, just minus the drug bit. So you had children drinking 1 to 2 glasses a day of 22% alcohol wine. Like, what were these children like? I mean, how could you ever possibly have got them to go to sleep? I'm sure there was no bedtimes back then. Everybody was just full of energy on cocaine wine. Hmm. So to give you an idea of how much, you're probably wondering, well, how much was it, Magnolia? So to give you some numbers, um, like I said, the main winery that made this was called Vin Mariani, and they did 6 milligrams of coca leaves or cocaine per ounce of wine. Cocaine wine was being made in the United States, and we were doing it up, trying to, I guess, overdo the French, and we were doing 10 milligrams per ounce. So when he decided to export it to other countries, and the U.S. included, he upped it, the percentage, to 7.2 milligrams per ounce to try to compete with the 10 milligrams per ounce that was already existing. Very popular for obvious reasons. I wrote down a few people that this was popular with and that also advocated for this wine and was very public about drinking it. There was no secret. This was no secret wine. Everybody was drinking it. Everybody was talking about it. So Thomas Edison drank this wine. He also claimed that it helped him stay awake to study and go on with his inventions. Go figure, Thomas Edison. The cocaine wine helped you stay awake. You also had President William McKinley of the United States drinking this wine. And I looked him up. He was our 25th president of the United States. He lived from 1897 to, that can't be right, 1901. No, I got those dates wrong. I must have messed something up. But he was killed by assassination. And then you had Ulysses S. Grant also, who said drank the wine. And he was the 18th president of the United States. Lived from 1869 to 1877. You also had, because this wine was also exported to England, Queen Victoria of England drank this wine. It helped. All these people claimed that it helped aid them with ailments that they had, cancer. These are all different stories that I read. Cancer helped, obviously, to stay awake, stay focused. Lots of different claims, but Queen Victoria of England lived from 1837 to 1901. She was an advocate. And here's where it really gets kind of funny. Pope Leo the 13th and Pope Pius the 10th both advocated and also consumed this Vin Mariani cocaine wine. Pope Leo the 13th went farther, and I found posters of him where he was out advocating for this wine, and he made up a Vatican award of a gold medal of excellence and awarded him for making this wine from a made up gold medal of excellence from the Vatican. It's hilarious. If you're looking on my social medias and stuff, if you follow those, then you can see the photo on there, but I have it on my phone if you're watching live to see. That's what one of the posters for this wine looked like. Quite enticing, I feel like. Looks quite nice. She's having a good time. Definitely having a good time. So if you couldn't read it on there, which you probably couldn't, it's really tiny. The slogan for this wine was French tonic wine fortifies and refreshes body and brain, restores health and virality. What a campaign for a cocaine wine. I cannot believe it. It still cracks me up that this is a thing. It wasn't even a fluke. Like, cocaine usage was prevalent during this time period. They were putting it in everything. It was like cocaine chewing gum. Cocaine was in everything. Everybody was using it. Then, you had the party poopers come in for this giant cocaine party that was going on everywhere. In the United States, there was a narcotics law that started coming into play in the 1900s. When you really start thinking about it, that's really when the party poopers started. All of a sudden, you had laws where like they didn't want to have cocaine in everything anymore, and then soon after that, you had prohibition. Now it wasn't just you can't have cocaine, but you can't have alcohol either. Talk about the party pooper party. So that all started in the 1900s, but in actual specifically 1914, the United States, the narcotics law, narcotics. God, I can't say that word. Law. Sorry, I'm drinking this wine and I haven't had anything to eat. Um, came into play, so the cocaine bit had to come out of it. Party pooper. So that got exported out. Um, but another thing that I found really interesting. So in the beginning of this, I said, have you ever heard of Coca-Cola and stuff? Because we all, hopefully, most of us knows that Coca-Cola used to contain cocaine, coca leaves, like that used to be part of it, the part of staying awake. I found it really interesting on the things I was reading was saying that time period isn't very different from what we're in now because we have so many energy drinks now that are just chocked full of ingredients that hype you up probably to the level of where cocaine could get you is what I was reading. um I am not super educated in what is in energy drinks and all of that, so I can't really speak on that subject because I don't know a lot about it, but I did read that that's what somebody said. Some articles was saying that. Um, quite interesting. But so I found this really interesting. John S. Pemberton, who invented Coca-Cola, he originally made cocoa wine. So yeah, and I couldn't find the exact date that John S. Pemberton started making cocoa wine, but I read that he got inspired by the recipe of Angelo Mariani for the Vin Mariani wine. I'm probably a lot of people got inspired by that wine because that seemed to be the forefront of cocoa wine everywhere. They just had great advertising. I didn't even want to say the list of actors and actresses because those are actors and actresses of the 1800s, and I didn't recognize not one name on there, but there was a very long list. So, I mean, everybody was sponsoring this one. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was behind it on posters, everything. So it was like the it wine, but it wasn't the only wine. It wasn't the only cocaine wine being made. Lots of people were making it, and in higher dosages, might I add. Mm. So I couldn't find the exact date that John S. Pemberton started making coca wine, but I'm guessing it's around the time after Angelo Mariani made his wine in 1863. So late 1800s, probably around that time. Um, I will say, so that was 1863 that the main wine was being made. And then there's documentation of 1880 of Ulysses S. Grant saying that he was advertising that he drinks John S. Pemberton coca wine to help aid his throat cancer. So that's a little bit of a time frame for us on when he was making it. But I found it really interesting because I never ever heard that before. That the inventor of Coca-Cola started with this coca wine, like I've never even heard of. I've never heard that cocaine wine was a thing. Anyways, so he started making that, and in Fullerton County, Atlanta, Georgia, that whole area. Um, this thing called, which is also something I didn't know about, this thing called temperance movement. The temperance movement, and also I didn't know this, that prohibition started earlier in the state of Georgia and Atlanta area than anywhere else in the US. They were quick to like crack the whip on it. And they started a temperance movement. And so a temperance movement is sort of religious. It was sort of like a religious movement to, I wouldn't say so harshly as to abolish wine and alcohol, but it was spreading traveling education and advertising that alcohol is bad for your health and bad for your spirituality and lots of other things they're putting in there. And so it was advertising for that, and it was called the temperance movement. Well, the temperance movement was big, like I said, in Georgia. A lot of things were happening quicker there than other parts of the country. And so John S. Pemberton, I guess, was getting heat from this temperance movement around that time. And he had to get rid of his Coca wine because it was alcohol. So what he did was he thought, how can I make my drink non-alcoholic? And that's where he started playing around with the invention of an 1885 Coca-Cola. Or I think I read 1885, but I also read 1886. So I don't know which year it was. But yeah, he added carbonation and he made it a non-alcoholic drink. Isn't that interesting? You had this temperance movement going on in Georgia. No alcohol. Alcohol is bad. And yet a cocaine carbonated drink was totally cool, totally acceptable. And for way longer too. I mean, if you read up about Coca-Cola, that stuff was staying around for a while. Mm. This wine really is lovely, guys. Let's get a little bit more in here. Hopefully it chilled a little bit. Let's see if this cooled it a smidge. Not really, not really. It's pretty much room temp still. This needs to be a bit cooler. Um, like I said before, though, every single Gonc wine that I've had, I've completely finished it. Like it's so tasty. Here, so I'm located in Middle Tennessee, and right now I think we're entering spring. We'll see. Middle Tennessee weather is tough. Well, Tennessee weather in general is tough because we could be entering spring, and like next week it could be frost advisory. We have snow. Like it's just so wonky. But for now, it's very warm outside, like 60s. It's fantastic. Oh my gosh, I got the hiccups. It's fantastic. So when I was looking through my cellar, I thought, you know what? Why not pull out a white wine for with the weather? Oh my gosh. Oh, hiccups. Oh, I'm sorry. Hopefully they'll go away. So I pulled this white wine thinking, oh, it's gonna be lovely. I was right. It's delicious. I will finish it today. I tend to like during summertime and maybe spring, but mainly summertime, I like a really rustic white wine. That's really like my jam. I love like Italian rustic, like an Arnice, something that's really acidic and rough and sharp. I really enjoy those. No, I'm not talking about sharp as in Sauvignon Blanc, but Italian sharp wines. I really search out, quite frankly. I zoom in on Italian whites specifically. And I'm not talking about the run of your mill, like not the Pinot Grigios and stuff, but I'm talking about like if I see the word Arnice, Arneis, I snatch it up for like a summer wine. I love it. Also white wines from Spain, fantastic during summer. Like I'm saying again, this is personal preference. This is what I personally like. Um, Champagne and bubbly year round. I'll drink that year round, any time of the year. Crack open some bubbly, I'm down with it. I mean, honestly, just about any wine, but really, white wines I do reserve for warmer weather. I tend to not gravitate towards opening up a white wine during cold weather. Um, I am a red during cold and white during warm kind of person. Champagne though and bubbles, man, that's year round. That there's no restriction to that. I'll drink that anytime. Fantastic stuff. I have a Costco sparkling wine. I think it actually says champagne on the bottle. That I want to open up during one of these podcasts and taste because I've heard good things and I'm not dissing it. I am open minded to absolutely any wine. You know, the amount of effort that goes into making wine is so high, guys. So I've mentioned it before. I worked at a winery in Barossa Valley, Australia called Torbreck. And so I was really fortunate to be exposed to vintage season and harvest and the crops and all the whole process of it, the whole year long lifespan of it. I lived there for about 4 months. And the amount of effort that's put into every single bottle of wine, regardless if, for instance, this wine I talked about it being handpicked, regardless of that. Okay, you have to plant the wines, you have to maybe graft the wines, sorry, wines, the vineyards, the vines. You have to baby them all year long with pruning, trellising. There's different methods of trellising for different outcomes. There's weather factors in it. So if you look into it in France and Burgundy and Bordeaux, and you'll have late frosts when there's flower buds or just the early beginnings of grapes being grown, and a frost can be detrimental to that harvest. So what they'll do is they'll line their crops up with barrels of fire to try to keep the vines warm through the night during these frosts. It's a beautiful sight. You see pictures and videos of it. It's absolutely beautiful, but I've talked to winemakers and over there and they say it's just absolutely terrifying, high stress because it's your livelihood. And I mean, if the frost gets your crop, you can't produce wines that year. It's a huge, huge deal. Um, so you have that, you have the trellising, you have the grafting, you have the type of conditions you're going to keep on your grapes during that season. Let's say you're biodynamic, say you're organic, say you're whatever. And that's another great thing about wine. There's so many different ways to make it. But let's say you're not wanting to use pesticides on your vines. Then you set up bird houses on either side of your vine rows so that birds will be there and cross fly to be able to eat the birds and have basically natural pesticide. You have that going on. You have roses being planted at the end of the vine rows. And that's a great warning flag if there's any kind of disease coming in on your grapes and your vines, because the rose bushes will get affected first. So it's like a little indicator flag. You have soil composition. You have watering is a factor. Do you want to rely just on water, like naturally, just rain? If you water, how much watering? Over watering is bad, let me tell you. You want your grapevines to struggle. You want their roots to dig super deep into the ground, and you want them to pull the nutrients and pull the flavors and the limestone and the clay and the terroir. You want the grapes to be able to pull all that up through the root system. So you want them to struggle to have to grow deeper into the ground to find water and then consequently byly be able to pull up those flavors. Um, So you have all those situations going on. Then then you have the grapes being harvested. And so even before that, you have not actually majority of wineries do not own the actual vineyards. They do not own the crops. There are people who own those lands, and the farmers, basically they're grape farmers, and then they have relationships with wineries and maybe contracts. I know at Torbrack, when Dave Powell ran it, that he would say that he had an understanding with the people that he bought grapes from for a very long time, and it was a handshake agreement. There was no paperwork. It was a handshake, and it was I take your word. It was a trust factor. That's a lot over the whole world. There's a relationship between the winemaker, the winery owner, and the people who actually farm the grapes. So you have that relationship going on. Then you have the actual harvesting of the grapes. So you have different ways to do it. Basically, two ways. You can either use a machine that goes through the rows and basically shakes the heck out of the vines and knocks down the grape clusters. And also, let me just point out with that, you shake down all the bugs. There's a lot of big, juicy bugs in wine. In the wine you're drinking. They're not hand picking them out, folks. Like, there's a lot of big, juicy bugs in your wine. Anyways, not to gross you out, but I mean, it's truth. Um, so you have that, or you have hand picking, which is really interesting and difficult because you have pruning shears, or like shears you go and you cut them, the stem, to drop them and put them in baskets, or one on the ground. I see a lot of them being tossed in a basket on your back. I heard there was a lot of really tricky things with that because your hands get tired squeezing them over and over and over again. So what they have is mechanical ones where I guess you put a little bit of pressure and then it just automatically squeezes and cuts it. And there's a lot of personal injuries involved with those clippers. Anyways, so then you harvest them. Then the people in the actual winery receives them. So you can receive them in different ways. You have grapes sitting out. There's natural yeast that's laid on the grapes out in the vineyards, which, so when you clip them and put them in a basket, obviously that's out in the field. You're not immediately making wine out of it and processing it. So it's out there with however many hours it takes for that harvesting session. I might add, people also harvest different times. People harvest at night, people harvest during the day, people harvest due to a moon cycle. There's different reasons on what time of day people harvest. So it's not always like during the hot summer day or whatever they're harvesting. But so they'll harvest it, and there's natural yeast on the grape skins. So fermentation can start during that lot of time. So you have people that pour dry ice over the grapes to help preserve it. So there's different things that they can do to help preserve those grapes until they can get them to the actual winery, and then you process them. And then white grapes tend to go into an immediate press, so you don't get a lot of pigmentation with it, and it stays very white, maybe not very much of a green hue. Red wines tend to stay connected to the grape skins because you want to pull that pigmentation, the tannins, and the flavor profile from it. You'll see this a lot in Oregon wines. You'll see labels saying whole cluster, and that just means that the green bits are in there too. Like if you buy grapes from the store and you have to pluck them off, that whole green stem, it means that they're fermenting it with that in it, which adds a flavor profile, obviously. Or they can like super duper shake them and shake the little individual grapes off of them and put them in. It's just winemaker preference on either one of those. But then you have them brought in, and then you have all types of reasoning behind it on how you make those wines. I mean, the winery that I worked at Torbrack, we had open vats. So you had an open, gigantic tub, basically, that had all the grapes dropped in. We mixed yeast, so you mix it in warm water and a nice warm bath, basically, and you get the yeast activated. That's another thing. There's lots of different yeast strains, so the winemaker decides which one is optimal. Um, if you're going for a very organic wine, a lot of times that means that they're using the natural wild yeast that just live on the grapes. That sounds great. Like, it's not great, but I'm just saying there's different byproducts of yeast. It's not always eat sugar, poop alcohol. Sometimes it poops other things that are undesirable flavor profiles. So that's a reasoning why choosing the proper yeast is really important. And some people think that the natural yeast out is better to use, and you're getting more of a natural product. But anyways, you've that going on. So then you choose the yeast you put in it. Now, if you're getting a really cheap wine, they also add a lot of water in at the end, and they water it down. But you pour the yeast in, and then that activates it. Then the yeast, it's like you dropped a bunch of sumo wrestlers off into an all-you-can-eat buffet, folks. I mean, it is go time. These yeast are like super happy. You drop them in. There's a giant vat full of sugar, and they just go to chow town. And they eat up all the sugar up to the point that you decide to stop it. And then there's different ways to stop it. Yeast can be killed off with alcohol or heat, either one of those. So for where I worked at Torbreck, you had to get up every day that we went to work. We're testing the vats of wine. You're testing temperature. You're testing sugar content, which really tells you like how far along the meal basically the yeast has gone before it's totally done, and where do you want to stop that at is also a winemaker's perspective. Do they want all the alcohol eaten up? Do they want majority of it with some residual sugar left over? These are all factors that change due to just basically the chef. I mean, a winemaker is pretty much a chef. They're deciding how they want to create the wine with the ingredients that are given. So definitely temperature is monitored, and you cool down wine because as yeast eats the sugar, it also produces heat. So a lot of times that process can get overheated, and then the yeast will kill themselves off because they produce too much heat. The way we used it at Torbreck, where they're big open vats, we did what's called pump overs. So you have like a big tub, and you're dropping all the grape chunks in there, right? You've dropped in the yeast juice, and then the yeast start eating up the sugar and making alcohol. Well, another one of the byproducts of that, there's heat and there's also gas, carbon dioxide. So the gas gets produced, and it ends up pushing the grape chunks and must and everything to the top. And then underneath is where the wine is basically settling in. The top is called a cap. And what you want to do is you want to break that cap up constantly into the liquid that's underneath it in different ways. You can do a punch down, you can do a pump over, you can do stompity stomp stomp with your feet. There's different ways to keep that mixed up, and you want that because you want the flavor to be pulled from the grape skins. Anyways, for us personally, when I worked there, if that vat started to get too hot or too warm and it was in a danger level, then when you did the pump over underneath with the juice to pump over the cap to mix it in, there was a cooling mechanism. So as you pulled the juice out from the bottom, it would cool it in the pipe before you were able to pump it over. And you were able to mix in basically a cooler liquid, but it was a liquid that was in it already because you're cooling it as it turns. It was really cool. There are different ways to be able to do that. So, anyways, so you do that, and then, okay, wine's been made. We've decided, whatever reasoning, we've stopped it. the juice is what it is. We want to finish this winemaking process. So then you drain out all the juice. You do what's called a dig out. So you dig with a shovel. It's literal. You dig it out with a shovel. You dig out what was the cap, which is all the grape skins and mush and everything. That's the yummy, yummy, yummy stuff that gives you the body and the yummy, yummy flavors in your red wine. So you shovel those out into like a basket or a press or whatever modern or non-modern apparatus they may be using at the winery that they're at. Ours was like a basket press. And then you press it down and squeeze out all the juice out of those little shriveled up grape skins. And oh, that's the yummy, yummy stuff. And that gets added in. And then that's the stuff that you end up putting in barrels, you age. That's the juice, that's the final form. Then you're into the portion of how long do you age these and what kind of wood barrels do you want to put them in? Do you want the wood barrels to be new oak, like new wood or old wood? How old? Um, then after that, you've got racking that's involved, which means all the sediments is going down. Then you want to just pull the juicy part off the top. There's fine filtered wine, there's unfiltered wine. There's so many different layers and different ways to make the wine that you drink. Then there's the bottling portion of it, which I also worked on the bottling line. So that's hard work. It's shocking how murderous cardboard boxes are, will readily just like Edward Scissorhand your arms. Learned very quick that if you worked on the bottling line, you need to wear long sleeve shirts to protect your arms. That was a learning experience. But I'm just saying, guys, like even this bottle of $20 wine, I can appreciate it. And I mean, I'm not just saying appreciate it because I really do enjoy this wine. This is phenomenal. Um, but even if you pick up a cheap bottle of wine anywhere, a $2 chuck, any wine, just know how much effort was put into that bottle of wine that you're drinking. I just really feel like it always deserves an appreciation on any wine that I taste because I know a lot of hard work and hard sweat and years of work went into whatever I'm drinking. Whether it's something I enjoy or not, I need to appreciate the effort that was put into it because there's a lot. Okay, I saw with my own eyes. I worked at a winery. I've seen it. I've done it. It is a lot of work. I'm telling you, from seedling to bottle, a lot of work along the line. So, regardless of if a wine is affordable or super expensive, I always try to just appreciate the effort that was put in to allow me to drink this. And it is an art form too. I mean, it's like I said, like a chef. Each winemaker has their own way of making the wine, processing it. I mean, down to the trellising of the vines themselves to get a certain output. I mean, it's amazing all the different windy roads you can go on in order to get to the product that you want, which is wine. It's really amazing. And yeah. Anyways, went off on a tangent there. It was something I was thinking about maybe to discuss, and we had the time today to discuss that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And I keep saying episode. I guess it's an episode, podcast episode. If you have any questions or want to maybe hear a certain topic being discussed, please feel free to DM me. I have Facebook, I have YouTube, and I have Instagram. The Cellar Geek podcast is on Instagram. Facebook is called The Cellar Geek, and the YouTube channel is called The Cellar Geek. So, any of those, you can comment, you can personally message me, any of those on any topics, maybe wines you want me to try. If you're listening to this and you would like me to review your wine during this, just reach out to me. I have some already that are in line for that. So feel free. I'll be happy to crack open your wine in any form on this and test it out. And maybe it'll be something that I could sell to my sellers and get them on board on wanting to have it in their wine cellars. I have a full array of clientele that like the funky to the refined. It's all over the place, and that's how wine drinking should be. Everybody should like different stuff. If we all like the same kind of wine would be super boring. It would not be an interesting topic. So mm, I'm going to become a lush tonight and finish the rest of this delicious Gonc wine that I'm thoroughly enjoying, making me feel like springtime has really begun. I hope y'all enjoy this episode, and it will be uploaded onto my YouTube channel. I'm not uploading them onto the Instagram page anymore. It's kind of weird the way it works. So just know that the main place to be able to watch these is on my YouTube channel. And then, of course, you can listen to them through all the different podcast platforms. I've gotten really good at editing the videos for YouTube. So you're not having the 30-second lag time like we do while we're doing streaming this live. I am working on learning how to edit the podcast audio ones though. So please bear with me while I learn that. Hopefully, my friend Timo can help me with that. And I will see y'all next week. I'll have to find a new topic next week. I gotta say, this cocaine wine thing really threw me for a loop. I'm really excited about it. It's kind of wild. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.